One of the critiques that I find, and I think it's a legitimate critique, I want to say that, of traditional 12-step recovery is dogma. Dogma is basically some authority prescribing particular rules and structure to a system. And they're relatively fixed. They're kind of rigid rules and structure, so a dogmatic statement would be, you're not doing Christianity right. Here is the one way to do Christianity, to be a Christian. And that's sort of a dogmatic statement. And so people find that in AA, and for some people, that's a big turnoff. And I relate to that critique. I have always been skeptical in the philosophical sense. I don't just buy something somebody's selling because they're selling it. And I also realize the reality and strangeness of the world. And so people don't fit into boxes, and their situations don't fit into boxes. And so you might hear something in Alcoholics Anonymous like, you can't take any psychiatric medication. It's less common than it was 15 years ago, but you still might hear that at certain meetings. And so there are sort of these cultural prescriptions that you'll hear from certain personalities in Alcoholics Anonymous, or here's the one way to, work the 12 steps. Everybody else is doing it wrong. Here's the right way to do it. And it's not my cup of tea. I personally don't like that. I'm a questioner. I'm a doubter. I'm curious. I want to understand the reality of things in the moment. And so dogma doesn't work well with me. It doesn't work well with my personality. And it doesn't work well with a lot of people. So how does somebody who's engaging in recovery, and maybe 12 steps is a part of their recovery or could be a part of their recovery, deal with this issue of dogma? One way is to not participate in 12-step or traditional recovery. But maybe 12-step or traditional recovery is a huge part of what's going to help you change. So if you're in that situation, I think there's clarity that people need. And the clarity is that the program itself is actively not dogmatic, right? So the program itself is not hierarchical. Number one, there's nobody in charge. So in order for something to be dogmatic, really, there has to be somebody who's prescribing the rules. There is nobody, and in fact, there really isn't rules in Alcoholics Anonymous. There is one criteria, which is the desire to stop using your substance of choice, and that's it. I mean, that's the only rule. You're actually allowed to punch somebody in a meeting. The people in the meeting might choose to take you out of there for everybody's safety. There's nothing in AA that says you have to go to meetings, first of all, or you're not allowed to be violent at meetings. There are no prescriptions. So there's like no dogma. People project dogma because they experience personalities in Alcoholics Anonymous that are dogmatic. And it makes sense that you would experience those personalities in Alcoholics Anonymous. Often dogma comes from pain and brokenness. I've gone through something very difficult. It hurt me, it scared the hell out of me, and I want the world to be understandable within my control. And from that space of response to my difficulty, I might create a whole crazy rule structure in my head of how I have to be. And if I go too far down that road, I might have to create a whole crazy rule structure about who you have to be. And I think in general, that's how dogma works. So I would say you have to separate the personalities who are dogmatic, and there are dogmatic personalities all over the world in all kinds of areas and systems, from the program itself.